Welcome, Gerlinda, and welcome, Ryan. And for everybody who's that will be joining us live in a moment or is going to be watching this recording, John Westfall was not able to make it. He had something he had to attend to kind of last minute. So he will be missed, but we are very fortunate to have a wonderful group of panelists as we discuss the wonderfully exciting world of HCD and ADU regulations. Yay. So thank you for everybody for joining me. I really do appreciate it. Before we do kind of get started, for those that will be with us and who are with us, we do have a few best practices. We will be kind of doing a little bit of a question and answer between myself and Ryan and Gerlinda and Serja, talking about a few things that we've kind of outlined ahead of time. But if you have questions, please put them into the chat and we'll try to get them to them as best we can. And let's see, we're already recording, so we have that ready to go. And so a little bit about myself, we'll kind of go around and kind of introduce ourselves. And then we will just kind of get into the meat and potatoes of this. My name is David Donahue. I work in the ADU space as a provider of accessory dwelling units. And I'm also putting together a educational portal that will be able to, again, provide some very, I think, germane content to folks who are trying to look at an ADU. And Ryan, if you would introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, I'm Ryan O'Connell, How to ADU. I do educational resources, and yeah, it's a lot of fun. Just obsessed with housing and accessory dwelling units, accessory drinking units, all the above.
It's good.
You guys.
And Gerlinda, would you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. My name is Gerlinda Berndt, and I manage HCD's ADU unit. And so I've joined HCD about 3 years ago, and before I worked as a senior property manager and oversaw a large portfolio of commercial real estate. So yes, and not into excessive drinking right now, but definitely firmly grounded in the ADU world.
Thank you very much, Gerlinda. And Serja, would you introduce yourself, sir?
Yeah, hey, Suraj here. I'm over here at HCD. I manage the manufactured home and factory-built homes program. We get a lot of ADU questions, so it's fun to answer those and get people knowing more about them.
And we're hopefully going to be able to do a little bit of that today. So thank you very much for that. And I apologize for mispronouncing your name, Suraj.
Yeah, Suraj is fine. Suraj, either way.
I do want to get it right. Thank you.
No problem.
So from the HCD, from my perspective, having dealt with and gone into and really enjoyed a lot of things about accessory dwelling units, there are a few things that I think a lot of people kind of initially kind of have difficulty understanding. And that really is the role of HCD. And as they kind of manage and regulate with your local city or county, your jurisdiction, on implementing the new ADU codes and standards and regulations. Because as I first, years ago, I thought HCD was going to be this ultimate kind of power that says to the cities, this is the way you do it and you have to do it. But that was a concept that I got rid of very early on, because the nuanced approach and it's not a hammer. You don't have a big stick. You're not beating people up. You're working with them and you're trying to kind of set, I think, a really good expectation of how they can kind of work in the new accessory dwelling unit codes into their housing elements and how to build additional housing stock, but then also kind of understanding what, Sacramento has kind of put in place, and that how that jurisdiction then can adopt and implement it. Is that about right?
Yep.
Thank you. The other thing too that I find fascinating and is that within HCD, not only do you have administering the codes that the jurisdictions need to follow, but you have this one area, which is Title 25 manufactured homes, which I've been working in for over 20 years, and HCD kind of helps regulate that. So they work on going, okay, these are housing units are built into a factory, and they can be built to the local jurisdictional codes, which is going to be the California Building Code, and implementing the Title 24 regulations that the state kind of mandates for that house and where it's going to be sited. And I think that that's one thing that in the ADU world, there's a difference. The other part of it that is not compliant to CBC Title 24, it's the true Title 25 as it pertains to homes that are built to a different code, which is the HUD code, Housing and Urban Development, which is the federal code administered locally on true manufactured homes. And Suraj, is that something that you can talk a little bit about, manufactured housing? You're muted.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, David, that's a good point. People do get confused on HCD's fulfillment on Title 25 and Title 24. Like you said, Title 24 is just like somebody building a stick-built house. It's just Title 24, but if you build it in a factory, now it's called factory-built home, and it's built in a factory, but it still has to follow the guidelines of a stick-built or a regular house you see going down the street. They're building a whole section of them just like that, but the guy has to follow those codes in a factory. So those are under the Title 24 factory-built homes. Those are the ones that we regulate. Now, you throw in Title 25 in the mix, it confuses everybody. It even confuses me sometimes. So when you throw Title 25 in the mix, that is a HUD that we enforce. HUD, is a federal program that does how factory. Now this is where it gets confusing. It's factory built homes too, but they're under the HUD Title 25 regulations. And those regulations are, I'm not going to say they're a little lenient, but they're minimum requirements to build a house or to build a manufactured home. And remember, both of them are built in a factory. So that's where I think a lot of the people or a lot of the locals get confused, is like, hey, this is a factory built home. It's built in a factory, but why isn't it following the Title 24 regulations like a normal stick built? No, this is a manufactured home built for Title 25 regulations. So a little bit of a education on that. You can go on for hours on that, but that's what I think a lot of people get confused at. So when you see factory built homes, you want to go, oh, okay, this is just like a stick built, but built in a factory and assembled on site. So that's where you want to stop, and then you want to move to the next portion of it, which would be a manufactured home that's built in a factory too, but follows the HUD regulations, which is Title 25. Now you get that situated. Now you bring that to the locals, and then they're like, oh, what the heck is going on here? And now we're confused. So, and now the manufactured home is, like I said, the HUD home is, let's say they want to use it as an ADU, 200 square feet or 300 square feet, and they want to put it in the back of their house, which is great, but it's under the HUD laws. So there's a totally different regulations there. And now let's say the same guy goes, hey, you don't want to buy a HUD home, I can sell you a factory built home, FBH, which is under the Title 24 regulations. So I don't want to get so far down this hole, but that's kind of like where we're at.
No, and I appreciate that. And I think one of the things that HCD does provide is actually a clear definition, and it's factory built is going to be just that definition, because this is, I believe, because factory built applies to anything built, you can classify anything built in a factory as it was factory built. But HCD has the term defined as factory built equals Title 24 CBC compliant. And it then also has manufactured home to be defined as anything that's built in a factory, but to, as you said, the HUD code.
Yep.
Which these are two very important, large, divergent, construction categories that a lot of people don't truly understand how that would affect their property values. Because
Yeah.
I have seen, and I think Ryan can also attest to this, where there's a lot of money being spent advertising by really good companies that are providing ADUs to people, but they're not clearly, in my opinion, defining the HUD Title 25 product. They're saying, here's an ADU. So that one of my concerns is that if you get a HUD product on a property that has a traditionally built Title 24 or CBC Title 24 compliant back whenever it was constructed, you now have these two mixed use types of construction on the land that may affect future property values differently than if you put a traditionally built ADU on the back. So there's little nuances that I'm really trying to pay very close attention to, and asking agents, real estate agents, and appraisers, like, okay, how do you see this really playing out? Because we know that ADUs are not valued the same way as stick-built houses are from an appraisal standpoint in general. But then when you throw in a different construction type, what does that do to the values itself? So that's, again, like I said in the beginning, I like to go down these rabbit holes.
Yeah, no, it can really mess up your valuation. Let's say you put in a manufacturer title, Title 24 HUD home in the back of your house.
25.
25, I'm sorry. Title 25 HUD home in the back of your house, 300 square feet. Never put it on the ground, still on the chassis, on piers.
Still
The appraiser is literally going to look at that and go, okay, that does not exist on the house. That's the way we're going to look at it.
Yeah.
Whereas you go with a FBH, factory built home, built in a factory and assembled on site on a foundation, on a regular, whatever, raised or a slab foundation, that's just like a stick built. That's just like a stick built. And he has to recognize that as a permanent foundation built, even though 90% was built in the factory and assembled on site. So yeah, totally different. You're going to get a totally different evaluation of that property. I've seen it, and I've known it personally, that you're going to get a totally different evaluation. On a HUD home, they sometimes don't even recognize that it's there, because they'll just take it out and say, well, we're just going to recognize that your existing house is worth this much. So stuff like that I've seen happen, and we have to come in and go, no, he has pulled in a permanent foundation on the HUD home, and you got to go through a couple of loops to figure that out. But I'm pretty sure Glenda can help you on this.
Go ahead, Ryan.
That's exactly the question. So if that happens to somebody and the homeowner just goes, this seems like a wacky appraisal, this doesn't seem like it's done a credible job, it's not a credible appraisal, what is the step that they take? Who do they contact?
Not me. No, of course they can reach out to me. But I think we're talking, it's really a very interesting and important conversation, because the basis really for ADUs or JADUs is state ADU law, which is 65852.2 for ADUs and 0.22 for JADUs. So, and that's really my purview, and that's where my team and I, where we provide technical assistance. Now, things are never that clear cut, and what Suraj just talked about is really a matter of codes and standards. And so when I get a question like that, I always say, well, it is state ADU law just doesn't deal with any of this, so it's outside my purview, but let me forward your email to my colleagues over at Codes and Standards, and then Suraj and his team come in. So it's an interesting, and what we do, I mean, I always try to provide, even if I'm not the right person to answer this question, or if it's outside my purview, I never just said, okay, that's it, leave me alone, I just don't know, you go figure it out. I always try to provide information, or say at least, no, I'm forwarding this now to the right person who can help you with. But in terms of our how HCD is organized, I mean, Codes and Standards is one division of HCD, and then I'm in the land use and planning or policy development division. So we are separate, but we are really under the umbrella of HCD, and we do closely cooperate. And it's the same, Suraj gets questions that are really straightforward ADU law related questions, and then he sends them over to my team. Mhm.
Yeah, on a situation like that, so you're saying that the appraiser went out there and he saw a ADU manufactured home in the back, and it's on piers like a normal home and set up and everything. Well, there's two options on that. One is you're going to have to talk to your lender. That's one thing, and see if they're going to appraise it, if they're even going to appraise it. If they don't, my personal experience is we have a form in codes and standards under our Northern Area office, which is a 433A form. And that form you have to fill out, and it's a step-by-step form on how to make that house a permanent foundation.
Right.
And-
And I'm very familiar with 433As. I've
Yeah.
done countless numbers of them. And the permanent foundation thing is really not that big of a deal.
Nope.
Even if they have a certificate of occupancy that they have, that is, the home has been attached to the ground and the utilities have been connected, and it's still viewed as chattel, which is what Suraj said in the beginning. If you have it there and the appraiser may not look at it because it's only been set up, put together, put in place, and then issued a certificate of occupancy, but still doesn't have that permanent foundation system. It's really a set of more advanced piers, a little bit more robust, and a tie down system that has been engineered and compliant with state codes, and then is recorded at the county where it resides. And then the HUD records, the serial numbers, HUD, I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, but it's like basically it's now removed from the Housing and Urban Development, or HCD's records, and it becomes part of the land. So now it's part of that APN number, and it's easier for an appraiser to see it, but it's still a different type of construction.
Yeah, yeah, that's where it gets a little confusing with the appraiser. So it's up to how I'm not in that I'm not in that specialty business at how to appraise a manufactured home that's on permanent, that is on piers, but on paper it's on permanent foundation. That's between you, the lender, and the appraiser, and how much money you want to come out of it. I don't know, but there is a way to make those permanent foundations, even though they're set up already as a permanent foundation. All you have to do is do the 433A, and like I said, you have to go through a little bit of hoop, but it's doable. I used to be the inspector out there in the counties, in Sacramento County and Merced County and all that, and I used to get 433As all the time. And people need money out of their house to do some stuff, and it's a great way to do it. But it's not like it's going to be same to same.
And I think that's why, and I would encourage Ryan, if you haven't already done one of your wonderful video tutorials, educational pieces, to dive into this, because I think when you have such a big following like Ryan does, and then you try to dive, and then somebody who loves the rabbit holes like I do, we can try to pull people along with us so that their future value of their home is going to be as intact as possible, which, to your point, is what I'm most concerned about, is that they can buy it. It's like a Title 25 built HUD home, may be easier to do, less work, a whole lot less disruption on site. Because wow, I started my construction in April and it's just about done. It would not be nearly as disruptive if we would have craned over a section or two sections of a manufactured product, which I'm going to address one of the questions that I got posted in the Q&A from Will. And Will, it doesn't matter on how that ADU is, whether it's delivered, like in sections or one piece and then craned over, because that can still be a factory built. Again, if you weren't here earlier, because I know there's some people, a lot of folks have just joined us, the term factory built, there is a term, factory built, and as defined in the codes means that it is compliant with your local jurisdictional requirements and also Title 25 as it pertains to where that unit is going to be sited. The Title 24 calculations are different than if that unit was in Southern California than it was up in the Napa area where Ryan lives. It has to be done per APN number per property. So it doesn't really matter what mode that ADU gets to your property. It really is critical, and it comes down to the codes that it was built to, and that's whether it's panelized on a flatbed, whether it was brought without wheels and axles and then dropped off of in other sections, or it did have wheels and axles that were removed. Those can be, the question to ask, is it Title 24 CBC or is it Title 25? Because the terms are too confusing. Factory built, modular, manufactured, they just now have been so blurred together. And I don't know, does anybody have, like, what would be the most definitive way to ask that question?
So yeah, maybe this is a great topic. I hear it all the time from homeowners, and so possibly a good layup for Suraj. If somebody hears from a company that that company sells factory built ADUs, but that company isn't in California, what are the legal standards for the term factory built for a company out in Texas? You know, is there a standard?
Yeah, the standard is titled either built to the California Building Code. If you're in Missouri and you're building ADUs in Missouri in a warehouse, well, you got to get with our third parties, because HCD does not do plan check. We don't do inspections. We don't do any of that. We outsource that. I guess a new term, outsource, but we call it third party. We give it to our third party, and they do the plan checks. And they do the plan checks and they submit to the locals. That's one thing you have to realize. So if a guy is building in Missouri and he's trying to sell products in California, there's no way he's going to have to build to California standards or HUD standards. California Building Code standards or HUD standards. That's his thing. If he builds to HUD standards, he can take that manufactured home and all over the United States, put it anywhere he wants. Nobody can say anything about it. He can put it in Missouri. He can put it in California.
So
but if he wants to do a factory built home under Title 24, then he has to do California Building Code.
And so that's the thing. We need to be able to, as a homeowner, you're going to go ask that provider, hey, can you show me that you're either HUD approved or that you've gone through the state of California's like third party, like Radco or whoever, and gotten an approval. That right?
Yeah. Yes. And then all our products will have an insignia on. You'll have every component for that factory built home that's in the factory assembled will have a insignia on it that it's been approved by a third party, which is HCD, which is our third party. And every single component out of there, whoever is building it in Missouri has to have that. It has to be inspected by our third party or our approved third party, and then it has to be put an insignia on it. So now you are assured that once it puts on a flatbed and brings it up to California, the local inspector has to check that each component and look at it and say, okay, this has been approved, this has been approved, this has been approved. And as you go along and you put it all together.
That's super helpful. Thank you. And so there was a question in the chat from Jaron Grady. I didn't want to talk about the specific company that they brought up because I'm not putting, HCD on the spot to like spot check individual companies. But I can tell you, if you go with the question Suraj just presented, that specific company is going to tell you, oh, no, we don't do that. And I've done that secret shopping, right? And so those are very important questions to learn if you're going to explore these offsite construction methods, because that insignia means everything. That's what makes it a real property in California, right?
Oh yeah, that insignia is crucial, especially to MH manufactured homes. That every manufactured home in the United States should have an insignia back of it saying it's approved by by HUD standards. It's a, I can probably put it in the chat if you want how that insignia looks. But yeah, so that insignia for a HUD home has to be in the back. Otherwise, but factory built home also that this, is a design and standards of California Building Code Title 20, Title 25. So.
And then, so follow up from the same person. If a company doesn't build to those two standards, can it be installed in California as an ADU?
No. We won't, like, for example, a lot of people are building these tiny homes. We have no idea what those standards are. No clue.
ANSI.
No clue. ANSI standards, which is an RV standard, which we don't enforce. So if they want to build it to our ANSI RC standards, you better go talk to your locals and figure out if those standards are okay for them to put in the back of their houses. But we don't enforce ANSI standards. That's, we don't, we used to, but we don't do that.
So one of the things, and I think, Ryan, excellent question and dancing around, because I think everybody, I hope, understands and knows who that company is, because they're spending millions in social media advertising, and they are building a plastic foldable box and claim to be having investors all over the place. And they're building into, and they're saying that they're factory built. I wish Siraj and Gerlinda could have the ANSI and that department back under their control, because I think that this is an area where a lot of people may not have the right information being put in front of them to truly understand what that is. Because the fact that you just said you don't inspect them, Siraj, they're saying that you don't need a permit to have them. You only need a permit is if you want to hook it up to maybe the sewer line. And so there's some very sort of nebulous, but all those things that I think are important to be able to have a certificate of occupancy, whether it's going to be issued, from a local inspector from HCD or from your local planning department and building department. There's such a massive amount of to understand the differences, just like what we're talking about. We all kind of understand them, but we're in the business. And is there a way to more effectively or to help regulate, the things that are coming in from out of state? We haven't even talked about use taxes yet, because if you buy something from out of state, they may not collect the taxes that you will be owed when you bring it into it and you install it here in California. It's the use tax. And that's a huge thing that I think has been covered over the years, that because now some of these out-of-state companies may not collect the local taxes. So thank you for asking that question, Ryan and Siraj. Thank you for that answer. I really appreciate it. So I guess to drill down,
it looks like Gerlinda had her hand raised.
Yes, go ahead.
No? Oh, it's just.
I think the most basic answer to your question is, of course, we're not out there on a street corner and say, be careful what you buy. It's kind of, how can I say, you invest you're willing to spend quite a bit of money in a manufactured home or a tiny home or whatever. And it's really then up to this individual buyer to make themselves knowledgeable. And what comes to mind immediately is HCD in general. Go on our website, hcd.ca.gov. And I know, because I browse this every so often, I know Codes and Standards has a big section with lots of details on that. So that is the most basic resource. And we actually revamped, HCD revamped our website. We revamped our website, and it's now easier to navigate. So that would be the most basic. But it's really like everything, you buy a refrigerator. What do? You do some research, and the question whether what you're putting there in your backyard or your front yard, should this be permitted? Should this be, do you need to get a permit? Do you want to fly under the radar and get caught later? So it's really up to the individual to make themselves knowledgeable. But HCD websites is the most basic and wonderful resource, really.
So I like the refrigerator example, right? Because I feel like people basically come with the equivalent question of like, hey, can I buy this refrigerator at 10% of the price from a junkyard? and you're like, well, there's, Freon, and if it ever turned upside down or got punctured, there's a lot of risk there. But we do need those sources of information. So great plug. We'll make sure the link to the website's out there.
Yeah, and I just put in the HCD's 2022 updated handbook, which I think is a brilliant resource. And so if you guys want to find out some more information about what HCD's put together, I think it is a great way to kind of really, again, like Gerlinda said, to educate yourself and to find out more things about that. So, and that kind of dovetails into one of the things. I'm sorry, Gerlinda, go ahead.
Can I plug my handbook there for a moment? So the easiest way is also when you go on the website, and we now have what's called sliders. So, there's one unit. It used to be the ADU team was up there for a while. Now it's something else. But on those sliders, you already find the ADU team, and all you need to do is click on that. It leads you to this specific ADU website. And on top, you have, on the right-hand side, right there on top, you have the most important tools. That is, the handbook is right there, the new handbook, and also the portal to submit questions. And Suraj, how is how is Codes and Standards website organized? But again, landing page, HCD, and then take it from there. Very, very easy to navigate.
Yeah, same thing on my side. When you get land to HCD, just go to the MHFBH website, and then it takes you right through what we're talking about. So pretty simple, but
Yes, no, I appreciate it. And there is, and I think the information has gotten, I know there's been a lot of work to try to streamline it, to kind of simplify it. And I think HCD has been doing a lot of good work in that area. So yes, thank you for that, Gerlinda. I think it's not easy to do, and it takes a lot of effort to be able to do it.
Is that my segue for 2023 laws?
Yes, you please, because
so I love the website too. I love the handbook. That's like that's the IT equivalent of unplug it, plug it back in. I send people the handbook and I say, show it to your city, right? Because this is the word and testament of the state, and it's real clear. It says what it says. Having said that, they just passed a bunch of new laws in September, signed them into law. And it takes time for you guys to work that into the website and the handbook. What can we expect from the HCD, and what should we expect from our local city governments they don't work for you? Like what should we expect when we go to the planning departments?
I can take that. From the planning department, you should expect that they keep track of things like that, and that they're informed, and that it really filters down to the intake person at the counter. Well, yes, and we since we just came out in July with the new handbook, and now as of effective January 1st, there are quite substantial changes that will take effect. So I do not know when we'll come out with the new handbook, because it takes some time to put it together, and it goes through internal reviews. But what we're planning on doing is putting out a memo for planners. It's still a little bit in the planning stage, but we've done this in the past, and this memo will do probably, but like I said, it's a planning stage. We're still thinking about it, but it would be a good thing to do, and we'll probably do that, and it'll be either distributed to all the planners or through a press release. And the idea is here that it really will make it easier for planners, rather than having to read the whole bill all the time, just to have the key features and be able to refer to that. It'll also make our work easier, because when we get requests, I can just refer to this memo rather than getting the details. So this is what we're planning on doing. The handbook gets updated regularly, kind of. So last one was in, what do I have? January 22, and then now, or we have one in December 2020, and then now the July 2022. I can't promise when the next one will come out. It also depends on what happens with regard to laws. Now, with SB 897, we have quite a substantial changes. And usually in every legislative period, there are changes to ADU law, but who knows, maybe not much is going to happen next year, and we might wait a while. So I'm keeping this vague, but the planner's memo should really be helpful.
That's great. And so let's assume that the planner's memo comes out somewhere in the middle of 2023, right? Some month that isn't January, it's not December.
but
like,
also not December, a little earlier.
Exactly. But so between January 2nd, when people start, exercising their statutory rights to ask for permits, if a city doesn't seem to be informed, what's a friendly way for them to talk to the planning department and say, well, actually, let me just send you the bill, or let me send you to the HCD, or what would you recommend just residents do?
For an applicant? Yeah. I mean, usually I think jurisdictions or planning departments are informed, or what you're referring to doesn't only really pertain to new law, but also maybe to discrepancies. Or so if an applicant feels, well, jurisdiction should really doing this, and I'm not sure, they should reach out to us. So HCD provides technical assistance. And so a good way, or the best way to reach us, is really go on the website, and then if you click on this link to submit a question, it will lead you directly to the portal, and then submit your question there. We used to have the ADU mailbox. It's still in effect, but we're really moving. We didn't really want to go cold turkey and cut this off. But it really used the portal to submit a question. That's the best way. I also have to say that we are receiving a huge amount of inquiries at the time, at the tune of about 300 or so per month. Almost 250, 70 a month. And so we are a little short-staffed, so expect a little longer time for us to get back to you. But that's what we do, then provide technical assistance in that form. And also the handbook is a key resource. So if you have a question, you might really want to start with the handbook, because your question might already be answered there, because we elaborated on the handbook. It reflects changes that became effective in 2021. And we also expanded on some of our FAQ bullets, and this expansion came out of our day-to-day experience. Where do we get questions, where we can maybe fine-tune an answer to just answer the question right there. And also our handbook has a larger bullet now, speaking to our enforcement capability that HCD has, but it really pertains to the review of ordinances that cities and counties adopt.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Any follow-ups, Ryan?
Yeah, sure. I guess that's a great kind of tee up for the enforcement ability of the HCD. Sometimes homeowners are like, this is a state rule, and the city is doing something else, or like, I just disagree with it completely. Shouldn't the state just be able to come in and force the city to do something? Do you want to set expectations about how that relationship works?
Yeah, no, thank you. That's a very important question. So, like I said, we provide technical assistance. So, and that really pertains to ADU law. Like I said, the basis here, 658, 2.2 and 2.2. And technical assistance means, well, if you have a question with regard to the law, maybe there could be a discrepancy, then reach out to us. And we provide the technical assistance really to individual homeowners, to builders, and also to jurisdictions. So homeowners reach out to us often, and also jurisdictions. They say, okay, or maybe we're drafting our ordinance, or this is a question we've never had before, or maybe we have a difficult applicant. Can you help us out here? And so both really look for us for guidance. But what it's really important to point out that the application process essentially remains between the applicant and the jurisdiction and the planning department. So we do this actually on a fairly regular basis, but that we say, okay, this is really an interesting case, or it's really worth for us to dig a little deeper. And then we would schedule a phone call with the applicant, and then follow that, always a conversation with the city to see their side. And then mostly at that point, we're able to provide enough guidance to say, okay, this is fine, and now you two work it out. But sometimes, and it has actually increased a little bit, it's a little bit unfortunate that applicants really feel, you HCD, you have to enforce this here. It's your obligation by law, and it's just not the case. There's a point where we say, we provided all the technical assistance we can, but now it's really up to you. If you your applicant feel that the jurisdiction is not handling this right, pursue appeals processes, or at one point you might have to get an attorney. So we provide technical assistance. We do not provide legal advice, and we do not provide legal representation. And so enforcement, it's also interesting because I think the term has been bandied about quite a bit in Twitterverse. And so, but the law makes clear distinctions where HCD actually has enforcement authority. A housing element would come to mind, where HCD then says, okay, you are in compliance or not. But ADU law doesn't have such a thing with regard to individual applications. It's per section H, subdivision H of ADU law, where, and even that is carefully phrased, jurisdictions must submit their ordinance to us. But HCD, we don't have to do anything. We're not obligated. What we do, and what we're doing now more, is review their ordinance and then issue findings letters. Once that process has been started, then it's really clear. Then the jurisdiction actually must change their ordinance, or if they think their ordinance is in compliance, although HCD findings letter says something else, they are actually obligated to re-adopt the ordinance, but with findings why they think they are still within the law. And then we do have the final option would be actually to refer the jurisdiction to the Attorney General, but that pertains, and it's very important to understand that, to a very specific situation, and that is HCD reviewing an ordinance of a city or a county. The rest really is the realm of providing technical assistance. And often sometimes I have to tell applicants, we went really far in your case, that we talked to you and we talked to the jurisdiction, but then I'm not making another round or 3 rounds of phone calls. That's just then where it remains. So that's very important to understand. But we do accomplish a lot on that level. We do accomplish a lot.
To put that in another way, and you can say if I heard this right or not, like every city's got to come up, or has the ability to come up with its own ordinances to implement these ADU rules that the state puts out. So the state statute, and then the local jurisdiction can either choose to use that, or they can come up with their local ordinances that are in compliance with that. The city has to send that to you, or the county has to send that to you. But then aside from just reviewing it and telling them that you disagree with something or not, that's kind of the biggest enforcement role that you've got.
Yeah. And I'm not even as HCD. So the city and county, they are obligated by statute within 60 days after they adopted an ordinance, they must submit it to us. Now, there is no penalty if they do it, but nevertheless, they must. We must not do anything. We are not even obligated to review those ordinances for compliance. But we do that because it's in our interest, and it's also in the jurisdiction's interest to get feedback from us that their ordinance is in compliance. But like I said, once we decide to start this process, then it's fairly clear, but it's really confined to them.
And then as opposed to that, if you have an individual policing action from the city where they're like taking longer than 90 days to respond to a permit or something really over the plate like that, a person can ask for technical assistance from the HCD, but strictly speaking, like it might be time to get a lawyer or start working directly with the city if they want an immediate change to their specific situation.
Right. Yeah, because also understand, I mean, I have no right to, no legal basis, no right, no anything to tell a jurisdiction now you must permit this or you must allow that. I mean, but you know, our word carries quite a bit of weight, but I do not have enforcement, and that I think is really important to understand, because you know, we heard HCDs sending out that many enforcement letters, and there are other aspects of the law where we do have enforcement capability, but it's just important to understand that.
Good questions. Thank you very much for that. One of the things I want to kind of touch on again, Suraj, that you mentioned, because there's, again, so much marketing that's going out there about different types of ADUs and the ones coming in from out of state and the ones and the companies that are calling them factory built. There's nothing that HCD can do or HUD can do to kind of regulate a company that is saying that they are selling factory built ADUs that are not built to any HUD code or to any factory built code, and that are indeed being built to the ANSI or RV codes. So there's nothing really HUD or HCD could do.
Yeah, we have, yeah, can't really do anything. We can, you know, like Linda said, it's a more of a, you know, you're going to put a $100,000 product or building in the back of your house. You may want to do a little bit of homework before you do that. That's my recommendation. But you know, economically, you know, inexpensive buildings are very, I mean, people are very vulnerable for that. And I've seen it everywhere. And the salespeople are so good at selling that product, and it is so hard. I piggyback on what Glenda said. Start with the county, start with the city. Like some cities allow RVs, you know, as ADUs in the back of their houses. I don't know.
City of Los
But
Angeles allows them, and I think
yeah,
that's very unfortunate.
yeah. So I mean, yeah, the best thing in my mind is to go to the city or the county and talk to talk to the senior planner, just regular planner, and just go, hey, I want to put an ADU in the back of my house. What are my options? And then, you know, then you can start kind of going down the chain on seeing exactly what you can afford and what you can put back there. But as for ANSI, yeah, we get that a lot, especially tiny homes. We get answers like that all week, all day. I just bought a tiny home from Missouri, and I want to. They're saying I can't put it in the back of my house. Well, sorry, man, I can't help you there. But maybe we can figure out a way that, you know, you could salvage whatever you have. So, you know.
Yeah, and I think you put it really well. The companies, the salespeople, are very good at what they're doing.
Very good. Yeah.
But it's that pain point. There's a need. That very likely the number one reason people are doing ADUs, family members. They got a mom or a dad who's all elderly and they need more assistance and they need more care. And they can't afford a $250,000 or $350,000 ADU.
Yeah.
And they see something that's 50 or 70,000, they can go, well, I can afford that. I think people can run into some really big issues if they do put that product in there. I'm not saying that for mom or dad that they're going to have a problem, but if they want to rent it out, if you're going to be renting something out that is not designed for permanent habitation, which anything that's a tiny home,
very liable. You're going to have a very big, huge lawsuit on your hands if you do something like that and something happens in there. And, you know, I've seen it where, you know, something actually has happened where the guy, you know, just put a house back there and started renting it out and something happened. So be very careful.
I would love to have that reference and that resource because wow, I'm one of those Don Quixote kind of guys. My wife criticizes me for. It's like, stop chasing fighting these battles that it's, you know, it's kind of taking you off, you know, track from what you need to do. Because I think a lot of people are ignorant to what those ramifications are. And so I will continue to kind of work towards education. And I know that Ryan will be able to also work towards education, because the more information people have put in front of them in a very easily digestible manner, I think the more that will be protected. Just like Gerlinda said, Siraj says, you have to do you have to educate yourself. If it sounds too good to be true, it is too good to be true.
Right.
It may take care of a particular need short term, but what are those long-term ramifications?
The if you're in an economic mind and you need somebody and you got to help, I think the manufactured home is the best remedy for ADU. You just have to figure out a way where your city and the county or your jurisdiction is okay. That's the best remedy. The other remedy, like I said, is a ADU built to California standards.
No, I agree. And then I'm gonna add one more thing, and I want to give Ryan maybe a chance for kind of a last question, and then anybody any closing thoughts, because as I expected, this hour has flown by. So thank you. The regulations, and this may not be something you all can answer or is in your kind of your area of responsibilities, but as somebody who's been a licensed manufactured home dealer for years and have been in the business for over 20, there's certain rules and regulations pertain to a dealer and how they advertise their product. And if you are selling a manufactured home product, you were supposed to clearly identify that you were selling a manufactured home product. You're supposed to list your dealer number, and that if you were selling an individual item, but most of the ADU providers are not selling something that they have in stock, so they don't have a serial number to it. But it's that there are big companies that are selling both factory built and manufactured, and they're under the same company name and roof. And HCD is not requiring them, that I've seen, to identify themselves and those individual products as they differ. Any thoughts?
You're saying that one company is making a factory built home and a manufactured home
Yes.
in the same building.
This company is saying that they sell the product, but 90% of what I understand that they are selling is a HUD product. But since they also say they can do a factory built or Title 2425 and Title 24 CBC, HCD is saying
we have those where they do both.
The company, if they are selling a HUD product, should be required to identify themselves as a dealer per code.
You're saying, like, let's say there's a company that sells tough sheds or whatever. They're unpermitted, not built to any code. They also sell a tiny home on wheels, not to any standard. And they sell a Title 25 HUD approved product, but they don't differentiate between which one's which in the sales room.
Oh. Well, I can look into that, David. I'll look into that and see how we can remedy that situation. I don't know if we can do anything, but we'll definitely look into that. You're saying because they have the umbrella of the HUD or the factory built, they push their product from the side. Like they open the door, but they got a bunch of stuff back there that that they can sell. I'll talk to John. I'll talk to my supervisor and see if we can do something on that.
I think that's probably that's like the perfect wrap up, right? Where I think you guys have been so helpful. Thank you for setting expectations throughout the process. And I think if I had a takeaway, it's like, hey, the HCD has staff, you've got a remit, you've got like things that you can do and things that you can't do, but you're open to communicating about that if people use the proper channels. And the proper channels sound like go to the website, find the right person to reach out to or the form for your situation.
Yeah, no, like Linda was saying, you go to our website, you go under building standards, you go under manufactured factory built homes. That's 2 steps. Now you got everything in front of you. Factory built homes, sprinkler systems, insignias, laws, third-party agencies, all that stuff right in front of you. That's where you should start. But the first thing I think you should start at is going to your local jurisdiction.
Yeah.
That's the first thing, because they have all the control on what what is required and what you need, because they can, like Glinda says, we can't tell them, hey, give them the permit. No way. But we can guide them in a way that tells them, hey, our goal is to put people in houses right now. And California's goal, all the way from the top to the bottom, is to put people in houses. And if we can figure out a way to make these houses cheap, not cheaper, but inexpensive, and get people into houses, that's our goal. That's the number one goal, and we try to achieve that. And if you're a barrier, or if you're somebody that doesn't want to do that or play with that book, then we need to figure out a way to if they're following all the guidelines and you're in the way just because you have a stigma because of manufactured home or factory built homes or anything like that, then we're not going to buy that. We're not open to that. We are here to get people into houses in the best way possible and the easiest way possible. And that's what we try to achieve. It's only me, John, and 2 of my staff members. We take care of all of California and all over the world on factory built homes. There's factory built homes being built in China right now that'll come over to California.
I believe it. I believe it.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, Suraj. Gerlinda, any closing thoughts as we come towards the end of the webinar?
Yeah, I would really like to echo Suraj. Start with when you want to build an ADU, start with your local ordinance. And also, just a little adding on to the ordinance, like you said, a jurisdiction does not need to have an ADU ordinance. We recommend it because there are certain aspects in ADU law where jurisdictions actually have leeway and can set their own standards. So start with your local jurisdiction. But if you have questions or run into problems, please reach out to us and consider us a partner, really, there to provide technical assistance. Consider us a resource you can always reach out to.
Thank you very much for that. And Ryan, any sort of final thoughts?
This has been great. Thank you for explaining the processes to us, and hopefully we get a lot of good information out there, set expectations. ADUs are a marathon, not a sprint. You're becoming a little property developer. You're building a house, even if it comes in a shell and gets installed pretty quickly. That's still, it's a process. I think that's what we conveyed today. And I'm glad that we've got some people at the state level. Is there like a petition I could sign to get you guys more staff? Is that a thing?
We're not here to talk about any money at all, Ryan.
All right. Never mind. Withdrawn.
Culture here.
Withdrawn. So yeah, thank you very much for answering all the
anytime,
questions.
guys, you want to do this again, more than happy to come out. And I'll have John out here, and you guys want to go a little more deeper into factory built and how and modulars and food trucks and all that. That's what I do. Food trucks, commercial modulars.
Wow.
MH and FBH. That's my specialty, and more than happy to educate anybody that wants to. So
I will take you up on that. I know that as soon as the new 2023 ADU regs start to hit and the jurisdictions start to embrace them, I think there's a lot of wonderful things we're going to want to cover. The 2 stories, the height limits, enabling 2 stories, the setback things, the not having to correct non-conforming, structures. I mean, there is just a litany of things that I think that the legislature went in to kind of clean up and streamline and make it easier for everybody to kind of get, like you said, and we all agree, more housing, because that's what we want. I do want to do something maybe second quarter of 2023, so that we can kind of get back together because I've really enjoyed this. This is very valuable information for people to know about. And I know that there's going to be a lot more questions that are going to be coming up. Ryan O'Connell, thank you very much for being here and asking some wonderful questions and adding your perspective. I really do appreciate that.
Can I live in a food truck? Is that a thing now?
It is.
That's another 2 hours, Ryan.
Suraj, thank you. Gerlinda, thank you guys.
I sent you a tiny home information bulletin, David. Please, if you can put that in the chat, that'll be awesome.
We will post it. Let's see. I'll do some. Let's see. Where did you throw that?
I just sent it to your email.
Okay. I'm gonna grab that before we close up. Boom, here. Tiny home bulletin, finding it. Thought my internet was fast. Let's see.
No problem.
So don't anybody leave while I open this up so that you can get it and download it before we close. And I will also say that I will posted in any of the social media things where the video will be living. So you have that there. See, it only took me about 60 seconds.
Mhm.
Paste there. All right,
No,
so that's the
there you
bulletin Suraj just kind of wanted to share with everybody on tiny homes. I know there's a lot of information that's out there. And again, take some time, really research the product that you're looking at buying. If it's coming from out of state and costs, you know, hardly anything, there's a reason why. Ask why and how it's going to affect you. Again, thank you for everybody being here and joining me on this webinar. I do want to do it again. And as we end, everybody have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you, guys.
Bye-bye.